Okay, good. I think I'm live on Facebook now, and about ready to go. Okay, only 4 minutes late. Oh boy, what can I do? All right, I got to find my screens again. All right, there we go. All right, I think we're just about ready to go, and I want to hit the record button. Last thing I need to do. Okay, welcome everyone to our special study on the Feast of Sukkot, and that will be coming up in the 2nd of October this year. So we've got a little bit of time before that, but I wanted to get all of the three fall feasts taught again. I'll try to do that every year. Just go through take 3 weeks and go through the three feasts, because we always have new people coming in and they want to know about the feast. That's probably the number one thing when people call me up and say, do you follow the feast, because we don't really know anything about them, or we've read some stuff about them, and now we're wanting to either practice the feasts and so forth. So that's what we're going to look at tonight, is the feast of Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. And let's begin with a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in words of Torah. All right, and I just want to welcome everyone here tonight, Randy and Alan, Anjana, and Ed, and Colette, and Elizabeth, and Jeff, and Mickey. Good to see all you guys here tonight. All right, so like I said, we're going to be looking at Sukkot. And as a kind of a review, we've talked about Rosh Hashanah, which will be coming up not this weekend, but the following weekend, on the night of the 18th and on the 19th. And so that will be, and that's the first of Tishrei, and that whole month of Tishrei is basically the high holy days. And 10 days later, you've got Yom Kippur, and so then finally Sukkot begins on. Okay, I might have got this messed up. Rosh Hashanah begins on the 18th of September, and then Yom Kippur is 10 days later, and then Sukkot is 5 days later, begins on the 2nd of October, and goes for 8 days. All right, and so the biblical basis for Sukkot is in Leviticus 23, and it goes 34 to 44. And I've got the first two verses written down here, and I'll go ahead and read the rest. Speak to Bnei Israel and say, on the 15th day of this 7th month is the feast of Sukkot, for 7 days to Adonai. On the first day, there is to be a holy convocation. You are to do no laborious work. For 7 days, you are to bring an offering by fire to Adonai. The 8th day will be a holy convocation to you, and you are to bring an offering by fire to Adonai. This is a solemn assembly. You should do no laborious work. These are the Moedim of Adonai, which you are to proclaim to be holy convocations, to present an offering by fire to Adonai, a burnt offering, a grain offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings, each on its own day. Besides those of the Shabbat of Adonai, and besides your gifts, all your vows and all your free will offerings which you give to Adonai. So these are in addition to the things that you would normally give. So on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruits of the land, you are to keep the feast of Adonai for 7 days. The first day is to be a Shabbat rest, and the 8th day is also to be a Shabbat rest. On the first day, you're to take choice fruit of trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, willows of the brook, and rejoice before Adonai your God for 7 days. You are to celebrate it as a festival to Adonai for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. Okay. And so when people ask me, says, well, why are you still doing the feasts, and why are you still practicing the feasts? Well, because in verse 41, it says you are to celebrate as a festival to Adonai for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. Forever to me seems like a very long time, and it doesn't have an expiration date. So that's what I tell people. It says you are to celebrate it in the 7th month. You are to live in Sukkot for 7 days. All the native born in Israel are to live in Sukkot, so that your generations may know that I had Bnei Israel to dwell in Sukkot when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Adonai, your God. So Moses declared Bnei Israel, declared to Bnei Israel, the Moedim of Adonai, or the feasts of the Lord. Okay, and so this is the feast of booths. All right, and so here's um, some other verses regarding Sukkot. You're to keep the feast of Sukkot for 7 days after gathering in the produce from your threshing floor and winepress. So you will rejoice in your feast, you, your son, your daughter, and your slave and maid, Levite and outsider, orphan and widow within your gates. 7 days you will feast to Adonai your God in the place he chooses, because Adonai your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the work of your hand, and you will be completely filled with joy. That's Deuteronomy 16, 13 through 15. Now, Sukkot has several names, and we talk about it being the Feast of Booths. Now, that's taken from the Bible verse we just read. Feast of Tabernacles, it's a reminder that God lived among the Israelites during their time in the wilderness. He lived, his home, his house was the tabernacle in the Holy of Holies, because that's where he was, above the mercy seat, and Moses could go in there and actually speak with the Lord. That's where his presence was. And then that's where he made himself available, even after, when the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle was pretty much resident in the city of Shiloh, that it was there for like 400 years. And so that's where the Lord would meet Israel, is there in that Holy of Holies. And that's why you call it the Feast of Tabernacles. And then the other is the Feast of Ingathering, which actually can be two things. Is it can be a harvest festival, gathering the grains and other produce, or it can also mean the coming into Israel by all of the men as required by the Lord. Now remember, the feasts that were required that the men would go into Jerusalem and offer their sacrifices. That was Pesach, Passover, the Shavuot, which was also one of the harvest festivals. That was the wheat harvest. It was a that's where you brought your bikurim, or your first fruits. So then the other one was Sukkot, which again was the end of the fall harvest. And again, you would bring in your bikurim, your first fruits. We talked about that yesterday in our service, what the bikurim was, the first fruits, and what that involved. And it's also called the season of our joy, and that's denoting a bountiful harvest. So the idea of Sukkot was supposed to be a very happy celebration, because it's the harvest, the fall harvest, and that was basically the end of the harvest cycle, because the various harvests were, you had the barley harvest, that was in the spring. That happened just about Pesach time frame, and then 50 days later you would have Shavuot, and that's when the wheat harvest came in. And both of those actually were a first fruit, and we have several first fruits all throughout the harvest year, because then you had the grapes would start to produce. They would start to be harvested somewhere around late June, early July, and then you'd have pomegranates, figs, dates, all during the summertime and up into the fall and through the Feast of Sukkot. You had all of those harvests. So when you got to Sukkot, you actually had a good bit of the seven species that grew in Israel, and the ones that in Sukkot they talk about only the four species, but in all there were these are four different the four species that are in the lulav for the Feast of Sukkot is different than the seven species. I know it's kind of confusing. The seven species you eat, the four species you don't. And um, so the seven species that we eat are what? They're dates, figs, pomegranates, grapes, wheat, barley, and what did I forget? What did I leave out? Figs. Uh, I think I've got figs. Olives. That's the one I forgot. Okay, olives. And so those are the seven, and then we go into any. Are there any questions right now so far that we've gotten this far? Any comments or questions on Sukkot? Okay, now we're going to talk about a lulav. Now this is a lulav. Now, in times past, I had a picture of some dignified elderly rabbi that was holding his lulav, and he had his talit over his head, and he had his white beard, and someone remarked that why was I showing my picture of myself with this lulav? And I said, well, no, that's an old man. That couldn't be me. So here we've got a picture of a young boy holding his lulav. So there should be no confusion now, because he doesn't have a white beard like some people we know. This lulav, it contains the four species for Sukkot, and that's the palm, the willow, the myrtle, and there's this lemon on steroids called a citron, or in Hebrew, it's an etrog, okay? Or if you're Hasidic, an esrog, okay? So here is, let's see, there's one of the lulav, and here is the four species here. And the four species are called the Arba'at Haminim, and they are specific to Sukkot. All right. Now, you've got the Arava, which symbolizes the mouth. Okay. Now, why the mouth? Okay. You look at this, and it's not really. You got to use your imagination, guys. All right. So these are kind of the lips. Okay. This is basically the lips is what this is supposed to symbolize. And then you've got that's the let's see, that's the willow there, and then you got the myrtle leaves, which symbolizes the eyes. So yeah, if you were to look at these, okay, you got these two eyes here, and just again, use your imagination. That's what it symbolizes, is the eyes. And then You've got the lulav itself, which is this palm branch here. And um, Pat was out in the garden yesterday, day before, whenever, and inspecting our palm trees. And she says, "Okay, we got two of them that are just ready right now. If Sukkot was now and not a month from now." So I don't know what they're going to look like in a month, but anyway, that's what they they will. Maybe we'll have another one, but anyway, that's the human spine. That's what it's supposed to recommend. That's your backbone. And then the etrog, it symbolizes the heart. Okay. And so on the first night and each day afterwards, we wave the lulav in the four cardinal directions, meaning you start at the east and then you work your way clockwise. Um, and so here's a fellow, and I apologize for the pixels here, but by the time I got it blown up, it's really pixelated. But you can see this fellow here. He's waving the lulav. He's facing east. All right, and then so what does he do? First, he waves it to the east, right here. He's waving it in front of him. Okay, that's what he's doing in front of him. And then still standing facing the east, then he waves it over to the south. And then he takes it and puts it over his shoulder and waves it back to the west. And then he goes over to the left shoulder and waves it in the over the left shoulder to the north. And then he waves it to the heavens, and then he waves it to the earth below. So that's the way that you would be waving the lulav, and there's a blessing that you say along with that. All right. And so here is the very distinguished looking fellow that people kept kidding me that's looked like me, but his beard is longer, and he looks a lot older than me. Yeah. But he's got his lulav, and then here's this apprentice priest down here, apprentice rabbi. He's pointing his lulav back over toward the west, and you can see how that happened. All right, and so I just like that picture. I think that's cool. So anyway, and so that's the lulav. All right, now we get the idea of, or the name of Sukkot from these booths. And so this could be a sukkah. That's called the booth, or it's a sukkah, and it's a temporary structure made, a lot of times out of wood, but a lot of times now in modern days, they make them. I've seen, they put up PVC framework and then string cloth around it, and then they'll put other stuff. I mean, the sukkah that we have out here it's a temporary structure. What I've done is I've made frames, and I put these plastic, you see the plastic trellis material that you get at the big box stores, Lowe's and Home Depot and so forth. And so I've got them in a 2x4 frame. I've got them pinned together, and so when it's ready to go, we can pull the thing out, put little pins in for where they pin them together, put the roof on it, pin that down, and it takes just a few minutes if you got a couple of guys helping. It takes all day if it's just me, but because first of all, I mean, to put the roof on, I have to climb up on a ladder, and then it never does quite fit exactly right. And so then I've got to get off the ladder, move the ladder over, move things around, put a pin in, go back over to the other side and find out that pin's not going to work in there, come back to the other pin, pull it up, and all of that kind of stuff. So lots of fun. And it's really character building along with the sukkah building. And so, but I've also even seen, I've even seen um, these inflatable Sukkot, and I'll show you one that's for the do-it-yourself challenged person. Okay, all you do, you plug in the fan on the thing, the air blower, plug it in, and it blows up like one of those. What do you call it? The bouncy room bounce deals that they have for kids' birthdays and so forth. So that they even have that, and I'll show you a picture of one of those in a minute. Okay, now sukkah can have 2, 3, 4 walls. And you have to be kind of flexible here because so many Israelis, they live in apartments, and the only way to build a sukkah is to put it out on their balcony. And so the roof is supposed to be covered with palm branches or other leafy things, and we use palm branches from our palm trees out in the yard. So there's another one. Um, Basically, it can be in all kinds of sizes and shapes and so forth. And I'm gonna pull up something here just a second, if you can. Um, and I think it's gonna pop a. You're seeing my screen. I think you're seeing my screen. I'm not really sure if you are or not, but are you okay? And okay, and I think I'm back into where I needed to be on this. Okay. Um, and so it is considered a mitzvah for every Jew to participate in the building and the decoration of a sukkah, meaning you're supposed to do that. And you get it all done before the holiday begins. And don't be like me, which a couple of times the holiday actually Sukkot actually gets here, and on the day of Sukkot, I'm out there still trying to put my sukkah together, climbing from one ladder to the other, and back and forth. So to build a sukkah, you got to have a site that supposedly nothing is hanging above it, like a roof or a tree, so that you can see the stars through the roof of the structure. Okay, and so what tickles me a lot of times, people say, "Oh yeah, we're going to go camping for Sukkot, and so that we're living in a temporary dwelling." And I said, "Wait a minute, are you going to be living in your RV that costs more than some of the houses that I've ever lived in, and that's your temporary dwelling?" Yeah, okay. So the sukkah floor is supposed to have enough room to accommodate a person who can sit with a small table. Okay, so you can have one that's just big enough for one person, and I'll show you some of those in a minute. Now, a in quotes kosher sukkah needs to be have at least 2 walls and a small part of a third wall. Okay, and so walls can be any kind of material as long as it's sturdy enough to withstand normal uh, wind. Okay, and you can actually use a side of a building for one of the walls. Um, in fact, I helped a rabbi down in Mobile, Alabama area a number of years ago when I was working on a drilling rig, and I helped him erect one so that we basically put the back wall up against his uh, building, and then we came out with two walls on the side. And in fact, we were fancy. We even had a front one there with a little entrance so that you walk in. And oh man, yeah, it was uptown. And so anyway, um, so that's for uh, some of the rules for building a sukkah. Now, They can come in any, all sorts of sizes and shapes and so forth. I saw one in Israel that was erected by one of the municipalities there around Jerusalem, and it would hold hundreds of people. This thing was huge. And, you're supposed to decorate the inside of it with the four species. What do we say? Um, um, that you'd have the palm and the myrtle and willow and the etrog, and also any other kind of fruits and vegetables, anything that would remind you of a good harvest. And so around here on Sukkot, so what are we, in the fall of the year, what uh, would we have on ours? Well, for me, I might have some squash. My tomatoes are already gone, but I've got tons of peppers, okay? And cucumbers. You might have some cucumbers and onions. You still might have some onions. Just about anything that is coming into season when you're doing your Sukkot, when you're doing your Sukkah. All right. Any comments or questions so far? I know I'm kind of just rambling on here with all of this information, but any comments or questions? Because I've had people ask me, says, "Well, I can't build a sukkah because of my in my apartment complex. They won't let you do that." But yeah, that's a shame because homeowners associations are they kind of tough on you sometimes. But there was a story back in World War II where there was a Jewish family that they had a sukkah, but what it was only 3 feet tall because they had a balcony. And this balcony, they were across the street from German headquarters of some kind of a German office. And so rather than build this sukkah to where everybody could see it, they only had it 3 feet high, and it was just their little balcony. And so they would crawl up underneath there, kind of creep under it, and that's how they celebrated their Sukkot. So I tell you what, now that's determination, and God bless them for it. All right, so the the roof of the sukkah, it it's called a sikhak or a shak. Okay, I got that. Get that. And that's from the same root of the word of sukkah, and it's covered that with material that grows from the ground, such as branches or leaves. And like I said, we have decorated ours um, with the palm leaves out there in the backyard, and other kind of, we've taken oak branches, and just various trees that we've got around, and just put them over that, and that would work also. And now some people, they'll actually purchase a sukkah kit, and it's got everything that so that you just put it together. I don't know if they sell them at IKEA or not, but the same idea is there, that you could maybe do that in an apartment building or something where it would be impossible to build a sukkah. So anyway, there's many ways that you can do the sukkah, and it's intended to serve as your home for the next 8 days. It's customary to decorate it with hanging fruits, flowers, popcorn wreaths, ornaments, and from the ceiling. And uh, some people they'll put up posters of various Jewish themes, and some people even string those winter holiday lights. Okay, you know which one I'm talking about. The winter holiday lights that put on these. The sometimes people will put around their green Hanukkah bushes and so forth. They'll put those inside their sukkah too, so they get a little bit more use out of them. All right. Um, so I figure you know what I'm talking about there. Okay. All right. Now here's another sukkah that looks like it might have been built out in the Midwest where they had cornfields. All right, and it's just it's a bit on the sparse side, I would say, but that's a sukkah. It's got like 3 walls, and they put stuff that grows on the ground. From the ground, they put it up there on the top, and they've got their little pumpkins and gourds and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a sukkah. And oh, and this is what you do when you're in New York City, okay? Now, this guy that started this thing, he is a from one of the Lubavitch groups there in New York City, and at the age of 21, he developed what they called the petty sukkah, or a rickshaw. It's a rickshaw bicycle, and he's got this sukkah attached on it, and it meets all the halakha for a sukkah. And so during the days before Sukkot and all during that the whole time of Sukkot, he said he'll spend about 12 hours a day pedaling around Brooklyn and Manhattan and letting New Yorkers step inside to say a blessing so that they can say, okay, well, I've sort of done my mitzvah of, doing the sukkah and so forth. So he does that, and he says, well, we do it for just enough to pay for the cost of building these things. And the to buy a bicycle or tricycle like this and outfit it, it said it cost him about $2,000 to manufacture these specially made tricycles in any way. But you can go in there and you can say your blessings, and have a little snack in there. And if you kind of pay him a little bit of a stipend there, he'll take you for a short ride in the sukkah around, there up and down the street, maybe a block or two in Manhattan or um, Brooklyn, so in the various Jewish areas. So yeah, quite ingenious for the fellow. But he says he doesn't make any money off the thing. The money that they do make is strictly to just pay for the materials, because the guys that are doing this are doing it on a volunteer basis as a mitzvah themselves to help other people. Carl, you had a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. I saw your microphone went unmute, so I thought you might have had a comment. Okay. All right. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool looking at that a sukkah on wheels. And I've seen some other ones in Israel where the guy's got his one guy even had he somehow had a little electric skateboard, and his sukkah was kind of attached to him and the skateboard, and he was going down the street, and he had his sukkah around him. So I think that was more of maybe a novelty than than the real deal, but he sure got a lot of looks. All right, so now here is a sukkah that was built by my good friend Ari Haubin, who lives in Philadelphia. And a lot of you may know Ari because he's come to a Tree of Life with Chosen People Ministries, and he's even spoken at our congregation. Real good friend of mine. We've been knowing each other for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And so this was a sukkah that he built in his backyard up in Philadelphia. Now, it's probably changed a little bit now, because I don't think that his little girls would fit in those little bitty tents anymore, because they're growing into, quite fine young ladies, and they're in their the oldest one is I think she's 16 now, so yeah, she probably wouldn't be in a ladybug tent in the for Sukkot. But anyway, that just kind of shows you again what you can do with your Sukkot. Be creative, just have fun. And our sukkah is built up in a tree. We have a treehouse sukkah. Now here's what I was talking to you about, the inflatable uh, sukkah, nice and decorated. You know, it's really great. And I don't know what they do. It looks like certainly you can see the stars there above it, but that's about it. I don't see how you could decorate it unless they just got it painted. They're counting painted decorations or whatever. But that is definitely the lazy man's sukkah. Okay, and sorry, let's see what else I got here for this. Now, there's some Sukkot. That's the plural of sukkahs, and you can see that these are built on the balconies of these various apartment buildings. And out here, and then so the people that are really uptown, they've got their the pretty good size Sukkot down here on the ground floor. You can tell by the size of the people down here that these could hold 20 or 30 people in there. And one of them's even got a little chimney in it. So wow, he's all in on this Sukkot thing. And but you can see the roof on these things. A lot of times, all they are is one of these roll-up deals, where they have the reeds or bamboo strips or something that are sewn into a roll, and they can unroll the thing, and then that's their roof. All right, is it weatherproof? Not hardly. Okay, but it works. It works. All right, and so now the there is we wanted to talk a little bit about the pool of Siloam. Okay, now the pool of Siloam. This is definitely a part of the ancient Sukkot celebration, and what they would do. There's a water libation ceremony, and so the let me see if I can find. Okay. Now it comes from the pool of Siloam, and now here's kind of the walkway, the area that you would walk in. We walked from the pool of Siloam underground. It's all underground now because they've just kind of built over the top of it. That's been excavated, but you can actually walk this walkway all the way back up to where um, you can't get up to the Temple Mount on it, but that's okay because me, I don't believe that the temple was on the Temple Mount. I believe the temple was right here in this area. Okay, so and that's a study for another day. But that's where the pool of Siloam was. It was actually unknown to us until just, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, 15, 20 years ago. They uncovered it, and there's only just kind of a narrow strip of it that you can see today. The other part of it belongs to another religion or religious organization or something. And if you've ever been to Israel and know how that the city is divided up between the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims. All right. Well, also be aware that the Christian side of things is divided up into the Armenians, the Greek Orthodox, the Catholics, and well, I don't know who else, what the other ones might be, but there's 3 or 4 of these major groups of the Christian side. And so one of the Christian sides, owns the property that's on the other side of the rest of the pool of Siloam, so they can't excavate it all yet, but maybe eventually someday they'll be able to do that. If you ever go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the idea of these various Christian groups not working together is exemplified by this ladder that's up in the air, that's up on a balcony, and they'll tell you, well, that ladder has been up there for over 100 years, about 150 years, because they were up there repairing a window at one point, but then they got into an argument about uh, how to take the ladder down, and the one group says, no, you can't take it down into our space, and the other one says, well, you can't come back down through the hallway where you got it. So they just left the ladder there. It's still there today. And so yeah, and yeah, Pat said that yeah, I'd forgotten that they said, well, the old ladder had kind of eventually rotted away, so they put in a new ladder to just show that okay, we still own that balcony, and you're not going to move that ladder. So it it's kind of a funny thing. All right, so well, I say it's not funny, ha ha, it's funny strange. Okay, so anyway, going on during the 7 days of the uh, Sukkot celebration, they had a sacrificial pouring out of water, and what they would do is called a water libation, and this was performed at the temple, and you can read about that in the Talmud in Sukkah 51a through b. And it's a ceremony. It's called Nisuk Hamayim, and the high priest would lead a procession to the pool of Siloam, where he would fill up a golden pitcher with water, then return to the courtyard of the temple. That he did that at night, and then the next morning, then he would pour out the water, and the crowd would wave their lulav and shout, "Save now, I pray, O Lord! O Lord, I pray, send now prosperity." And that was their cry at that time. Okay, and we got a chat here someplace. Let me see if I can pull that up. And so, oh no, I'm not supposed to be making you laugh, Elizabeth. I'm trying to make you remember what I'm saying here. So I guess if you're laughing about it, that's okay, as long as you remember. And in fact, I've had people tell me that, said something about some sermon I preached, I don't know how many years ago, and they could tell me because that, yeah, I remember there was this picture there that you put up there, and you made some kind of a joke about it, and I still remember that sermon. So I guess if it works, it works. Okay. Now, and the problem that I have with it is sometimes I tell my jokes and then I have to explain my joke. So it wasn't a very good joke, I guess. All right. So now on another level here, and I'll go ahead and get down because we're getting down on the time. I wanted to talk about the other aspect of Sukkot, and that's in John 7:37 through 38. It says, on the last and greatest day of the feast, Yeshua stood up and cried out loudly, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture says, out of his innermost being will flow rivers of living water." Okay, so we know that water represents life, and it nourishes our hearts. You know, we cannot go without water. I've said many times that that I drink a lot of water during the day. That's just me. I have to have it, and so I'll actually, you know, here's my water jug, and I'll drink 3 or 4 or 5 of those a day when I'm out working, and it's very important. Water is probably the most precious commodity on earth. The reason for that is because you have to have water to make coffee in the morning. Okay, so in Jeremiah 2:13, it's written, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. How often have we sought for water from sources other than God?" That's what he's saying. You know, I had living water for you, and what did you do? You dug out the dirt so that you got drainage water going in there, and then even the cisterns leak, so you don't have anything. And says, how often have we hewed out our cisterns only to find them broken and leaking and ultimately unsatisfying. You know, if you've ever seen these huge cisterns, and I've been into several of these huge cisterns all over Israel, and some of them, even today, 2,000 years later, will still hold water to a certain level. And and you can see the plaster, the cement that they put on those things is still holding today. Incredible. But they, you know, the water that goes in there, there's no way for it to get it out other than getting a bucket and pulling it out. Well, you know, that water is going to get a little bit stanky there for one of these days. And so it's not the best. Living water is better, where you got nice flowing water from a spring. And so it was during this last day of Sukkot that Yeshua got up in the middle of the temple grounds, actually, and he didn't mumble it, he didn't whisper it. He said he cried out, he shouted out, "If any of you guys are thirsty out there," says, "come and let him drink from me. Come to me and drink. And if you believe in me, he says, out of your heart will flow living rivers of living water." What is he talking about there? He's talking about the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, that's going to be flowing into our hearts and out. Hopefully, it's not going to be dead water. It's going to be flowing water, living water that we get from God, and then it flows out of us in our attitudes and our actions and our loving of one another. And so, Yeshua spoke of the living water that he would give to those who ask him. And so that has got to be what we're talking about, the Holy Spirit. Okay, any comments or questions so far on that? Okay. Now, after the water ceremony during the evening, they had special festivities called Simchat Beit HaShoeva, which means happiness of the house of the water drawing. Simchat Beit HaShoeva. And during this time, they had four great big menorahs. Okay, you can see these big. Now, okay, whoever painted this was probably a European painter, and that doesn't, you know, menorah, that's not so much of a menorah, but it is a candle. I mean, the deal. And so the young novice priests, the guys, okay, this is kind of their initiation into the club. They would have to climb up there on these tall ladders, and then they would light these, you know, first of all, they'd have to put oil in them, and then they would light those things. And it was quite the light show. And they would have torch dances. You see the people down here with their torches, and they would dance around, and the Levites sang and played music. And then this would occur every night during Sukkot. And these this display of light was so spectacular that the sages, they say that he who's not seen the rejoicing at Simchat Beit HaShoeva has never seen rejoicing in his life. In other words, and that's in Sukkah 5:1. In other words, if you hadn't seen this, you hadn't seen nothing yet. And so, you know, and that also, in connection with this, with the light, Yeshua said he revealed himself to be the light of the world, and that's in John 8:12. And so he was the very water from the pool of Shalom to heal he used the water from the pool of Siloam to heal the man who was born blind. And remember, that was one of the tests of whoever claimed to be a Messiah, because lots of people claim to be the Mashiach. But one of the things that the sages say had to occur was the Messiah could heal a person of a congenital defect. So a person that was born blind, a person that was born lame or halt, something like that. Something that they were born with that was a deformity. Only the Messiah could heal them. So Yeshua healed the blind man. He had been born blind. And so then the other thing that the Messiah, proof of the Messiah, was that he could heal the leper. And so we know several occasions where Yeshua healed the lepers. And then the final thing was that the Mashiach could raise people from the dead. And we saw that on several occasions where Yeshua raised people from the dead. Most spectacularly, Lazarus, who had been dead over 3 days. And by this time, even right guard wouldn't help him. He was stinky. Even his sister said so. Lord, don't raise him up. Now he's he's going to be stinking. And so Yeshua said, watch this. And so that's when he raised Lazarus from the dead and proved to the world that, again, he was the Messiah. So the Sukkot is a very important holiday because it again, Yeshua said that he was the living water and he was the light of the world during Sukkot. All right. And one of the last things I wanted to bring to you about Sukkot was the idea that a lot of people believe that Yeshua was born on Sukkot or during the week of Sukkot. All right. And the timing, they base the timing on the account of Zechariah, and the Bible never really says when Yeshua was born, but we know that it was not during the winter months, in December, because by that time, it'd be cold and the shepherds would not have had their sheep out in the pastures, because there were no pastures. They would have already been cold and frozen. There would not have been that much grass out there. Plus, it's cold at night, and the lambs would not be able to survive that. And so you study the birth of John, and again, there are various other. There are other ideas about when Yeshua was born, but most of the Messianics today will tell you that they believe that he was born around Sukkot, based on when John the Baptist's parents, the time when Zechariah was serving in the temple, and the angel came to him and says, Zechariah, your wife Elizabeth, even though she's old, she's going to have a baby, and it's going to be he's going to be a very important guy. He's supposed to be a Nazarite from birth, and it did not tell him, though, that his name was going to be Yochanan. Okay, and that's the Hebrew for what we say John now. And but let me tell you, John was not a Baptist. Okay, just so you know, he was an immerser. He was not a Baptist. And so Elizabeth, she conceived in July, and the angel appeared to Miriam, the mother of Yeshua, 6 months later in December. And in fact, the Bible says that John, Yochanan the immerser, was the very first one to rejoice at the being of the Messiah. Why? Because when Miriam came to see Elizabeth, her cousin, and they got close together, they embraced. Inside Elizabeth's stomach and belly, John the Baptist, John the immerser, leaped. The Bible says so he recognized that he was in the presence of the Messiah. He was the first one to recognize that outside of Miriam. So anyway, the and when you count all of these things out, I don't want to take the time to go through all of that tonight, because it takes a while, and it's a nerdy study. Okay, I just tell you right now, you get into counting times and this, that, and the other, and it gets down to where, okay, Yeshua maybe was born in during Sukkot. Okay, then you got contrarians like myself that believe that he was born on the first day of Nisan. Okay, which for prophetic reasons, there's some reasoning there, and you could also count back when Zechariah was in the temple and use that date. So that was okay. In my yeshiva, that years and years ago, that's when that's one of the things that my professor there, my rabbi at that time, taught, that it was more likely in the time of the when the lambs were born, and there's prophetic significance there too. It doesn't really matter, okay? All that matters is that the Savior was born, Yeshua was born, and so it's not a salvation issue one way or the other. All right. So, and finally, Sukkot in the millennium. In Zechariah says, then all the survivors from all the nations that attacked Israel will go up from year to year to worship the King Adonai Tzvaot and to celebrate Sukkot. All right, people ask me, says, well, what about these feasts? I mean, they're going to come to an end eventually. And well, it's not going to come to an end until the end of the millennium, and then the new heaven and the new earth. Then maybe it may come to an end. I don't know. The Bible is silent about that, and it says that the God's law is going to be, His Torah is going to be in effect as long as there's a heaven and an earth. Well, what happens when there's a new heaven and a new earth? I don't know. But we do know that during the millennium, after the Battle of Armageddon, and Yeshua has come down and he has destroyed all the enemies of Israel, and Israel is at the top of the heap at this point. Yeshua is ruling and reigning from the Holy of Holies in the temple in Jerusalem. And it says that all of the nations will have to send up an ambassador to Israel every year. And if they do not do that, then he said that they will not, that nation will not have rain for that year. What does that mean? The nation won't have rain. Okay. What that means is that their economy is going to be right in the tank for a year. Their economies will fail no matter what it is that they're doing. It may not be that it's so important that they don't have rain, but the idea is that if you don't have rain, you don't have crops, you don't have prosperity. So there will be Sukkot during the millennium. Okay, there will be other because these Moedim, the feast of the Lord, they said forever, a generation. They're for all your generations, and so we'll see these things. There will be sacrifices during the millennium in the temple. There will be millennial sacrifices. There will not be. I mean, it's not going to be for atonement. Don't get me wrong. But there will be sacrifices. There will be fellowship offerings. There will be the guilt offering and the various things, but they won't be for atonement. Okay, they will be for a memorial, for reminding people. God is a great reminder. He likes for us to remember things. Okay, and so that's what that's all about. Okay, I think I've really run through the Sukkot thing. Now next week, the 13th of September, we will not have a class. I will be officiating a wedding that day, and so I will not be available to teach that evening, and we will probably still, well, this time of night, no, we'll the newlyweds and all of the party will have gone home, but we're hosting the wedding at our home, so I won't be able to do the class next week. But I will let you know when we do the next one, because now we're coming up in the high holy days, and it gets really crazy for the rabbi. Okay, so we'll try to keep you informed of things that are going on. Those of you that are with us from Tree of Life know that we are getting back together on the 12th of September in the um, in St. Peter's United Methodist Church at our regular place over there in the gymnasium, and so we're really looking forward to that. We're just happy as clams on that one. So, all right, so that's all I
Amen.
have for tonight. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the lesson tonight? All right. Well, I guess I just
I'm gonna try and build me a sukkah.
good deal. I mean,
I'm gonna try and build me. I'm gonna build me a sukkah.
good. You know, you look online, you can see all sorts of examples, and it doesn't have to be fancy. I tell you what, we can, like I said, the one that we've used for years, it's a treehouse, and so uh, it's you know it. Okay, so ours may not be totally kosher, but it's all right. We've enjoyed it. We've had a good time eating our meals out there in our treehouse sukkah, but.
But
Um,
y'all don't sleep there. You just eat meals in there, right?
Yes, we only eat meals in there because my wife is uh, oh, I don't know what you call someone who has a phobia of snakes. She said, "There's no, I'm not sleeping out there where there might be snakes," and
Yeah, me either. I'm with her. Gosh.
Now, Rabbi, you built one for the synagogue a couple years ago. You still have that one that you built?
yes, sir. I have that one. In fact, we are going to celebrate Sukkot. We're gonna have a service. Sukkot begins on the Friday night um, before we have on the Friday night. It begins then. Okay, but we're going to have our service, our Sukkot service, on Saturday. Immediately after that service is over, we're going to jump in our cars, and anybody that wants to can come out to our house, and we'll celebrate the rest of the day. If you want to spend the night, just bring your own camping gear and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then we can also do that on the last day, which is the next Shabbat. We can do that, and also on that day, the last day of Sukkot for this year. The next day is Simchat Torah, joy of the Torah, where you roll the scrolls back. So we're going to do both of those at that same time. During that service, we're going to celebrate the end of Sukkot and also Simchat Torah, where we rejoice in the Torah and allow everyone that wants to carry the Torah around the building inside, um, for a minute, and so I think everybody kind of enjoys that, and so the Sukkot will those two services would be it would be October 3rd and October 10th. Yes. Okay. So and I'm going to try to publish a schedule Monday or Tuesday as to when all these things were going to be coming out. Okay, and I got to just get verification from St. Peter's that we can use the building. That's kind of a problem. Okay, so the okay, Elizabeth, on the high holy days, there's only the three 3 days, 3 high holy days, which is Rosh Hashanah. That would be beginning on the night of the calendar. I think it's the 18th. Yeah, the night of the 18th, but we'll celebrate it on the 19th, which is because we don't own our own building and so forth. Now, but then on Yom Kippur, which would be the night of the 27th of September, we will. That's the one thing I've got to verify with St. Peter's, that we can get together for that night, and then the next morning on the 28th of September, which would be Yom Kippur. So you got the 19th is Rosh Hashanah. The 27th, the evening of the 27th and 28th is Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot begins on the 2nd of October and runs through the next Shabbat. Okay. And I'll like I said, I'll publish a list of our services when we're going to have those in the next day or so. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Very good class tonight. Very
Yes.
good.
Very informative.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this always kind of a fun. I've been teaching it for so many years. I go back through my stuff and I said, okay, how can I dress this up? How can I make it more interesting or bring other things into it? And so it's always kind of a challenge, and still do the same thing, to let you know. Now, what'll happen is the next time we have a class, it will be before Sukkot. And so what I may do during that class is do an instruction on how to build your own lulav, which is the thing that you wave, with the palm tree and so forth. It's not rocket science, guys. And I have built them to where, okay, they weren't pretty, but that was, you had the lulav and the hadass and the so we had all of the different pieces and held them all together, and we waved them just like we're supposed to do every day of Sukkot. But at any rate, maybe that's what we'll do is make a lesson on how to do that. All right. Any other comments or questions before we call it a night? All right. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay. Sold. We're gone. All right, guys. Shavuot Tov. Have a good week, and we will see you not next week, because next week I'll be officiating a wedding, and then, so I will not be available for that. But then the following week will be Rosh Hashanah, and we'll be celebrating that in our building where we should be. Okay. All right, guys. Good night. Laila Tov, and we will see you another day.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.
You too.